Here we are this week with Parenting Paused, talking about seeing from a place of lack instead of from a place of abundance. We have this tendency, I know they've done studies on the mind or the brain, that we have a negativity bias, but we often see our children and ourselves from a place of deficit more than from what actually is. And what I mean by that is often we will say, my child is not focused, my child is not motivated. The schools will often say your child is all over the place, they're not focused, they're not paying attention. And then we begin to pathologize that. We start to think that there's something wrong with our child when we see these indicators of things that we think that they should be doing. And what we forget to do is to ask ourselves, well, where are they focused? Where are they motivated? We forget to see from the actual motivation and the focus, we start to see the task. Well, yes, they may not be motivated or focused to do chores. They may not be motivated or focused to do homework, but it does not mean that they don't have focus, right? It doesn't mean that they don't have focus or motivation. As I like to say always, have you ever had to tell your kid to get on the computer or to go play with Legos or to, do something that they love, right? Every child has something that they love to do. They're highly motivated, they're focused, they're excited, they're often passionate about it. And yet, if it's not in the form that we think, especially in schools or whatever, if we have this idea that they should be motivated to learn math or motivated to read, we begin to look at them as having a deficit. Now, what this does is that the child begins to hear that they are a deficit. Not that they have a deficit, but that they are a deficit, that something is wrong with them, that they're not smart, or they're behind, or they're lazy. So then this goes into their self-concepts, because that's how we create egoic structures, by the knowledge of the external, what the external is telling us, who we are, how we are, what we are. That's how we begin to develop this self-consciousness. And eventually the child begins to start to feel that there's something wrong with them, versus they just don't have a high value yet on certain forms that we actually have a very high value on as parents. And I know you all probably know this. I get more calls than any about kids being on computers and games and how stressed the parents get because they're not doing their homework, or they don't want to go out and take walks, or they don't want to exercise. And so then we get caught up in this idea that there is something wrong with us, first of all, because we aren't able to motivate our children to do what we want them to do. So we begin to feel powerless and like a failure. And then we project it out into our children, that we make up things like that they're addicted, and that they're frying their brains, and all of these things that we get so righteous and intense about, instead of really slowing everything down and recognizing that our children's motivation, the things that they love to do, are in a different form than ours. Now, the reason this happens is because we're always thinking about that future. We're thinking about they've got to get, to the future, and if they do this now, they never will. But what I want you to think about, instead of thinking about the future, I want you to really come back in to ask yourself, what skill sets are they learning when they are motivated, when they're doing what they love doing? Such as in those video games, they are focused skill set. They are driven skill set. They are learning social skills, skill set, right? They are being challenged. They're meeting challenges, skill set. They're working with emotions or with feelings because they get upset, they get frustrated, and they work it out because they want to go back to the game and they want to get better. So what you want to do, anything that you're judging the form of what your child is doing, I want you to come back in and ask yourself, well, what skill set, doing Legos all day, what skill set is my child learning by doing Legos? And remember that the forms that we want are going to be very, very different than our child's. But I can pretty well guarantee you as a child, you didn't have the highest values that your parents had. Children, especially young ones, have social emotional. That's their highest values. As they become teenagers, those values begin to shift more, but they're still highly, highly social. As we grow older, our values shift. We begin to shift more toward work, toward family, toward health. So don't think that your children are not getting these things, that they're lazy and they don't want them and they're not worried about their future, so then you get worried. Remember, anytime you're worried about your child, you're just uncomfortable with where they are. So take a little inventory where they are. Ask yourself, doing the things that they love, that you never have to motivate them to do, what skill sets are they learning that will transfer into the future when the form changes? Thank you for listening to this episode of Parenting Paused. If you enjoyed the episode, do me a favor and share it with your mama friends. You can also leave a review wherever you listen, which will support getting the Pure Joy message out. Come on over to the Pure Joy Parenting Practice Facebook page or join me on Instagram to hear more. And don't forget to download your free copy of the Safe Seat course on the Pure Joy website. And while there, check out the offerings page to go deeper in the Pure Joy work.